Hello, you're listening to Lists and Other Things That No One Asked For with Jesse Barbin, your weekly mini podcast about books, movies, TV, growing up, etc. Thank you for listening. In the 6th grade, my family had just moved to New Mexico and I had only one friend. I would follow him around middle school and we had all the same classes except for 6th period. And at that time, he would take his bulky instrument case and go to band. Every time he would go to class, the door would open and a big blast of poorly played music would pour out, and it was fascinating to me. I went home and asked my parents if I could join middle school band, and they said that would be fine, they just needed to scrounge up an instrument. To my shame, I asked initially for a saxophone, as I've mentioned previously, probably based on it having the most buttons. They looked into it and quickly determined that saxophones were too expensive. My grandmother heard, and she said she found my grandfather's old trumpet in his garage. Considering how important playing music became to me later in life, it's funny how casually I got into it. Eventually, playing the trumpet wasn't enough to scratch the itch, mainly because in middle school I discovered punk rock and I knew I wanted to start or join a band. This is where I had to make some tough decisions. Guitar was a cool instrument, but it was very complicated to learn. They had so many strings. Plus, there were tons of guitar players. In the suburbs where I grew up, you couldn't swing a dead cat without hitting a guitar player. Drums looked easy on the surface because there's technically no notes and it's just hitting things, but when I sat down behind a friend's drum set, I immediately realized this was a myth. Your right hand is doing something different from your left hand, which is doing something different from your left foot, which is also doing something different from your right foot. Plus, my parents would never have gone for it because the drums are so loud. I looked around the landscape and realized there weren't a lot of bass players and determined that playing bass was the easiest way to get into a band. I got onto Musician's Friend and ordered a bass starter kit, a Rogue precision bass copy, and a brown Sunburst with a 10-watt amp. I started jamming with my friend Clay. It was technically a band, so my plan had worked. My friend Clay was quite good at guitar, and after a year or so, I realized he wasn't into writing his own music and he didn't want to perform live anywhere. This was crazy to me as I was dying to perform live. I had to leave my comfortable environment of my almost band and find a new group of bandmates with more ambition. No bands were anxious to have me, so I determined to start my own, which meant that I had to start writing songs, which was difficult for me to do on bass. So I ordered an electric guitar and started learning. Also a Rogue copy of a Fender instrument, a Telecaster in this case. I also ended up being a singer in several bands, mostly because singers are hard to come by, and because I think a lot of people secretly envision themselves as a good, charismatic singer, and I'm not immune to that. In general, when a guitar player is the singer, they're not very good. This was pointed out to me by the drummer of one of the bands I was in, and I was obviously offended. And I said, "You know I'm a guitar player singer in your band with you." And he was like, "Yeah," and just shrugged. I mean, we would have found a singer, but it's hard to find a singer. That's why I was there. I was offended initially, but I get what he was saying. Even though I play guitar a lot of the time in bands, I still think of myself as a bass player. I feel like I have a bass player's soul. I want to fit in, I want to make things happen, and I'm not trying to cause problems or hog the spotlight. I do want to write songs and perform them, and if I am the one who needs to write them and make it happen, I'll do it. But I play guitar like a bass player, just supporting the song, not flashy. There are two types of personalities in bands: drivers and passengers. A successful band needs at least one driver, who is someone who wants to write the songs and promote the shows and get the band as big as possible. Then the passengers are the other members who just want to play live, or just want to be in a band, or just want to stretch out their musical chops. They're not interested in becoming the biggest band, and they don't need creative control. They're just happy to play some songs and hang out with people. Bass players are frequently found to be passengers. One is not necessarily better than the other, and not all bass players are passengers. Some are obviously drivers. And every band needs a certain mix of drivers and passengers to work. If you have a band that is all drivers, that band will break up immediately because everyone wants to be in charge and have control. If you have a band made up of too many passengers, they will never make it out of the garage. The band that is the most successful will be one that has a mix of mostly passengers with a few drivers. I've been both a driver and a passenger, a bass player's soul, like I said. There have been times where I've had a lot of creative control in a band, and I could see the pros and cons. On the one hand, you can have the biggest say in what happens in your songs, but then, on the other hand, all the responsibility of writing the songs falls on you, and it's exhausting. The times when I was a passenger had benefits and also drawbacks. Collaborating on songs was a huge relief because it took a lot of effort of songwriting and spread it out amongst multiple people. If I agreed with the decisions that my co-writers were making, I love collaborating. But as soon as they made any weird decisions or did something I didn't agree with, I felt myself wanting to become the driver again. The balance is so delicate, and that's why bands break up. People wonder why genres like EDM are so popular, but if you can make music with a laptop rather than with a bunch of people with different personalities and varying levels of reliability, the laptop wins every time. Thank you for listening to Lists and Other Things That No One Asked For. If you have a suggestion for a list or an idea you'd like me to talk about, please fill out the Google form in my bio and I'll get to it. I'm available everywhere at Jesse Barbin, new episodes every Monday.